Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cucina Aurora podcast. I'm so happy to have you with us on another episode of Conversational Witchcraft. Today's kind of special. We have someone very exciting. Today, I'm chatting with the amazing, fantastic, very handsome, fabulously bearded Devin Hunter. Devin Hunter is a best-selling author of the Witch Power series, the creator of Modern Witch, the podcast, the blog, the magazine, modernwitch.com. So awesome. As well as he is a professional psychic medium and occultist. He is a part owner of the Mystic Dream in Walnut Creek, California. So you definitely want to check that out if you're up in California. And an initiate of multiple occult orders, including his own, the Sacred Fires, and is the co-founder of the Black Rose tradition of witchcraft. He's also been featured in multiple publications and is a frequent presenter and keynote at conferences and festivals throughout the nation. His brand new book, The Modern Witch, Spells, Recipes, and Workings. It's a pictorial spell book and grimoire, and it's now available. It's amazing. I have my copy. Oh my God. For those of you that aren't watching video, I'm holding it up in front of the camera. And that's important because it's freaking beautiful. Okay, it's freaking beautiful. I have to say that was one of the things about this book, Modern Witch, that really stood out to me, because witchcraft books don't usually look like this. And so I'm a very visual beast. And so I'm very drawn to pretty colorful pictures. If you haven't seen it, get it, buy it. It's awesome. So Devin, welcome. We're happy to have you. This is very
Yay, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I hope so, because we don't know each other. We're not friends, but now we are.
This is our first time.
It's our first time. Although, if I can be entirely honest, I stalked you a little on Facebook, but like in the nicest, not creepy way.
Okay.
I dig your.
I'm down with that.
So you wouldn't know it's me because I use a numbed plume on my personal Facebook page, but I'm really digging your suggestive plant post.
Yeah. Yes.
This is all plants that look like dicks, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, that's enjoyable. I mean, listen, we talk, just so you know, enjoyable. We talk dicks and sex, and we say fuck a lot on this podcast. So
good.
Yeah, you're welcome to. How did this start with the plants that look like dicks?
I love all plants and I love dicks, and so I thought if there was an intersection of the two of them, then I should really work on bringing that forth into the world. And so that's how I belong to a lot of plant groups, and it's funny. I actually took I don't know, I'd probably say like a 9-month break from Facebook. I walked away. I was like, I'm done. And I just kept it because the podcast has like 11,000 followers on Facebook. And I'm like, well, in the grand scheme of things, that isn't a whole lot of people. Like, I know podcasters with like 125,000, but
it's a lot. I've got like 4.
It's people. Yeah. And the show's been around for almost 11 years now. So I didn't want to just like dump and get rid of all of that. And so I kept my personal page, and I kept the Modern Witch page up, and I walked away and I was over it. And then my partner said, hey, there are actually some really cool plant groups. You should get back on Facebook. And I'm like, no, I'm done with Facebook groups. And because I had some really just messed up experiences with like Facebook pagan groups and witchcraft groups, and lots of just woohoo. And so I was like, no, I'm good. Peace out. And then, he kept bringing it up. And he's like, look at this picture of this plant. And this person says to do this with their, and I'm a plant head. So I'm like, all right, fine, fuck it. So I broke down, started getting back on these plant groups. And then as a result, started posting more on my page again. And, so plant groups have saved my Facebook experience, I think, more than anything. And I'm like, I want this, but like for witches, like I want the same kind of energy, the same kind of idea. Like it's a totally different world. So while I'm in there in these plant groups, people are just posting things, and I have a dirty mind. And so I'm like, that really looks like a dick. And I mean, cactuses are easy. Yes. I mean, come on, almost all cactuses look like dicks. But so I was like, oh, that looks fun. And it's so, I was just trying to be funny. And a big part of my, I guess, just the way that I see social media is that, especially if you're in the occult, we tend to be very serious people. Yes. And we tend to be very dark and oopy spooky. and that's all fine, you know, and we need that. But at the same time, sometimes you just need to laugh because there's a dick on your screen, and it's not like an unsolicited dick pic, it's a cactus pic, right? So we can be funny about it, we can make jokes about it being a prick, and you know, all of the fun things. So, and that's what it's about. And so I try to be that guy. I try to be you know, comedic relief when I can, and so I just started posting cactus dick pics, and people have responded better than I thought they would, so they will continue.
It's hilarious, and you're 100% right. Like, first of all, there's so much crap and there's so much awfulness in the media, on social media, on Facebook, in general, right? Like, take the pagan community out of it, and whatever bad experiences people may have had in you know, like you said, in the pagan and the witchcraft groups, which eventually always seem to get a little too political, and I don't mean that political in terms of like mainstream politics. I mean political within the community. This is why I don't participate in them either. And one of the reasons why I use a nom de plume for my personal Facebook account. So yeah, it's important that we laugh and we joke, and that there's levity and joy. And yeah, dicks. I mean, plant dicks, and aren't plants?
Yeah, I mean, and they're funny.
They're hilarious. And plants, all plants have dicks. I remember a comedy piece by Robin Williams where he was like, "Oh baby, give me your hairy statement now." Yeah. And it's hilarious. So yes, I've been very much enjoying your plant dick pics quite a lot, and I hope that you
I'm so glad. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Now, are most of those your plant dicks, or are they
no.
things that you found on like
it's totally stuff? And now I have friends like messaging me, like I'm in this like the supermarket and the line to check out, and I'm getting like these, and I'm like, what? I look at, and there's this big giant, you know, plant dick on my phone. And if you didn't know, you know, God help the people who was like looking over my shoulder in line. So I'm saying, but so I'm getting, you know, so I have friends who send me stuff now, and again, I'm a part of all these groups, and so if something funny pops up, I copy it and I have to save it. But no, I actually don't have any dick plants. I'm actually kind of, you'd think I would.
We're gonna have to get you some dick plants.
I know. I don't. I have like sarracenias and things that kind of could look like a dick, but it's not a dick. And so, and you just think we would have more dick plants, but
So do you consider yourself, and I would be like super honest with you, I am not a garden witch. I have a black thumb. I am terrible at growing anything except herbs. Like I have some beautiful white sage that I've been able to overwinter over years and years. I think this plant is like 4 years old since I moved into my house.
Where are you at? Where do you live?
I'm in New Hampshire.
Okay, you need a badge for that. You're really? Keeping white sage alive in New Hampshire. You need a badge for that.
And I did manage to keep my Italian oregano alive over this past winter. But rosemary, which is like a favorite herb for me to work with spiritually as well as cook with, can't keep her alive for anything. Like every year I plant her, and every year she dies. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I am not in any way a garden witch. We have some issues with fungus in our yard, so I keep trying to grow vegetables. And the fungus is, I don't know what it's called, but we have these gorgeous apple trees in the backyard, huge. These 2 giant apple trees, and they've got to be over 100 years old each. But they have those brown spots all over them. It's like a copper spot fungus. And from what I have learned is that it gets into the air, and then it hits the fruit, and then the fruit falls to the ground, and then it gets in the soil. So I have not been able to grow tomatoes, which you don't know me, but I'm obsessed with tomatoes. And haven't been able to grow them. Last year I had a horrible time with cucumbers. Hey, cucumbers look like dicks. Just gonna bring every time I bring up something that looks like a dick now, I'm just gonna bring it up because I realized we can have that conversation. Now I'm going to start posting foods that look like dicks, and there's a lot of them. So how do you do you consider yourself a garden witch because you love plants so much? And how much of your love of plants goes into your witchcraft?
This is like such a weird, for me, this is a weird thing because I never thought I'd be talking about plants and with like anybody, let alone like this becoming what my life has been like this past COVID year, which is great. It's, so my mother owned a landscaping company when I was a kid. And so my first job was actually like working in a landscaping company and doing all of that fun stuff, and did that for a couple of years. And then when I got out of high school, I worked for a produce farm that also sold tropicals and plant and, perennials and things like that. So I have always been around plants and I love plants, and that I took it all for granted, right? So like, just because I grew up in rural Ohio, so like, you can have a kick-ass garden and you can do all kinds of really cool stuff. And there's a little bit of wild crafting and things like that, but like when I think of like a plant witch or something, I think of like Amy Blackthorne and people who like really, really intently have gotten into plants for their traditional magical purposes and things like I tend to think of those people. I am not that guy. I going about this all totally differently. I have, I obviously have plants that we grow like specifically for magical stuff. Like we've got mandrakes and got all this stuff, but I fell in love with tropicals like big time. So my big love is really tropical plants, and at least this stage in my life. Before, give me herbs and things, and I was having a good time with herbs, but really like what I'm finding myself get obsessed over and like spend hours and hours. Like I actually have a catalog on my computer of my specimens. Like I'm getting really obsessed with it, is going through that was my Alexa turning on, but is going through and working with these plants. So it's been interesting. I don't know where it's all headed. I just know that I started collecting rare plants, and I'm importing rare plants right now and selling them, and kind of doing this like as like on the side now, which is this totally trippy thing. I never thought I'd do any of this. So I've started this little process of like importing these rare plants and reselling them if possible, but also like taking clippings and keeping them and, all of that stuff so I can expand my collection. So it's been fun. And what the thing is that when you're a witch, everything is magical, right? Like I can't take it out. I can't take the magic out of anything I do. I'm an animist. I believe everything has an indwelling spirit. I believe, that all the things that we believe in the occult. So for me, I don't really consider myself a plant witch necessarily. I guess I'm a witch who's really into plants, and so maybe I am a plant witch. I don't know, but I have been really this last like year and a half, I've been really into working on discovering the magical properties of plants that we don't normally consider to be magical. So like our house plants, for instance. And so I have been doing a lot of work around that. And I'm one of my, we get into the spirituality stuff of it all. I keep clicking stuff with my coffee cup. Sorry about that.
It's totally fine. My producer will edit it out.
Yay producers.
Yay producers. So coffee or tea?
Coffee for me.
Is it the morning by you?
It's yeah. I've only been awake for an hour, and here we are. That's how much I'm here for you.
I'm so those are your like, I'm running 5 minutes late. I was like, I gotta have my coffee. I've got, this is my tea Earl Grey hot.
Oh yes,
hot because it's 2:30 and it's fucking raining and cold here. So anyway, plants as spirit and what you're working on. And
so I work a lot with Pan. Pan has always been a big figure in my life. And we call, to get really into it, I'm a monotheist with polytheist leanings. We'll kind of get into that. It's one of those things, very confusing. But so I work a lot with Pan as like the divine masculine energies, especially when it comes to physicality, physical form, things like that. So Pan is very much in my work aligned with the floral world, the world of plants, and the chaos of what we call the chaos of the green flame. And so I am I've had this really trippy time kind of rediscovering Pan while I'm working on my tropical plants indoors, which has been really trippy.
Cool.
Yeah, it's totally neat. So, and while that's happening, my roommate has started working with Pan for other things separately.
Yes.
And we don't talk about this stuff until it's like, time to really sit down and talk about it. So here I am going, oh, I'm building this indoor sanctuary shrine terrarium thing for Pan and and then he's like, oh, I'm working on this Oracle deck that's gonna be, I'm like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
So we're the energy's here, we're all tapped in, it's really trippy. But
well, yeah, I mean, you've got to figure, if you're working with Pan and he's working with Pan, even separately, is it that you're working with him separately and bringing him that energy into the home, or is he in the home and you're both tapping into that energy? It could be both or neither, or a little of everything, which I think is it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic. So you're finding that's bleeding into this thing, this love that you have of the plants and the tropical plants specifically. You had said you're redefining, or you're rediscovering how plants like your house plants have magical energy and magical properties, and how to work with them. Can you give me a specific, like what kind of plant? Like
yeah. So right now we've got a lot of our like really popular house plants are tropicals. They come from a rainforest, basically. And we do have some problems with like poaching and things like that. Like that's become a bigger issue with some of the really rare plants. But for the most part, you can walk into a store and get something like a syngonium, which is often called an arrowhead vine or an arrowhead plant. And they come in all of these beautiful colors and shapes and variations. And I work with that a lot to help with manifestation and directing energy. They're fast growers, which is really great. And they come to this really nice kind of sagittate point. And so it helps, for me, it's all about like flow, like directing energy. And that's been really, really cool, working with stuff like that, working with, plants that we would think of for like protection, like ivy. Ivy is often used for protection and magic. Well, there's like 50,000 varieties of house ivy. And ivy is one of those that like gets bugs a lot. So I don't even work with ivy anymore. I work with something called wax ivy, which is more closely related to a succulent, and it doesn't get bugs. So like gnats and spider mites, they just don't like it. It's too waxy and thick. So it can avoid that kind of stuff. So there's that kind of stuff. I work, I'm really ridiculously into alocasias, which are a type of elephant ear plant. They come in all these really amazing varieties. And those have been really interesting because, so I'm a medium and I work a lot with spirits in the spirit world. And, what's neat about these plants is that typically when they're younger, a plant, in order for a new leaf to come, an older leaf has to die off. And it's this really kind of sad process if you watch it, because like you get really invested in these leaves because they're just pretty and they have like these different patterns, and you get really and then suddenly it falls off and you're like, fuck. So but as what I've realized is, with my work with the underworld, we often say like it's kind of the underworld is like the opposite of our world. So when it's something's living here, it's dead there. When it's living there, it's dead here, back and forth. And so I have been sending messages to my loved ones by whispering into the elephant ear while it's dying, and having it take messages to the underworld and seeing if they respond. And I feel like I've had some really cool instances where my beloved dead have responded. And so there's been some neat stuff like that. So that's like my little laboratory. I mean, that's basically what we're doing is just playing around and seeing what's...
You're a plant witch.
I mean, I guess I am. I had never considered. Here's the thing. I never really considered it. I always thought of, like I said, Amy Blackthorne.
Yeah, somebody who's like an herbalist or like a garden witch. Or like, yeah, absolutely.
And that is just not my trip. I didn't even the first time I think I took like herbs to like really like seriously took an herb was when Christopher Pinzak recommended I take nettle for something years ago, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it.
Whatever.
Yeah. And all right, whatever. It's never really been my thing. I am just not that. And I've tried, y'all. I have tried to be the green thumb witch. No, I'm just the green haired witch. And it works. I love it because it's different and it's totally weird. And there aren't really a lot of people talking about it. Especially in the world of occult. And I think because we want our poisonous plants and, all of this stuff.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, people just assume that I am a garden witch or that I am a plant witch because I'm a kitchen witch, or at least I say I'm a kitchen witch, but that's my dominant practice, but that's not everything that I am or do. just like you're a psychic medium, but that's not everything that you do, you know?
Right.
And so people just assume that I'm a great gardener. And I'm like, no, I fucking suck at gardening. I keep trying and failing. And this year I said to my husband, I'm not fucking doing it again. I'm going to plant flowers that aren't going to die. And I'm not going to try to keep growing things that are edible because they don't want to grow in my yard. And that's fine. I'll let someone else do the growing and I'll do the cooking. Great. But I think it's really interesting specifically because most of the time we think about garden witches, plant witches as people that grow things that are able to be used medicinally or magically in terms of incense or, culinary items, fruits and vegetables. Specifically, nobody's talking about tropical plants because at least I haven't seen any. It could be possible, but I'm sure that you've read Christopher's Plant Spirit familiar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. And I feel like that's kind of like what you're talking about is like finding this new part of your spiritual self that kind of has always been there. I love that you talked about this is something that you sort of grew up around this. It's sort of one of my questions I wanted to ask you was like, what in your youth kind of shaped your spiritual practice today that wasn't necessarily pagan? You ask people what has influenced you in your spiritual practice, and people will bring up different books by different authors or pagan workshops or things like that they saw. They went into an occult shop and they met someone. But I think for me, we all find this path. We don't wake up one morning and go, hey, I'm a witch. We sort of find it. But there are notes of it in our early years and going, this makes sense to me. I'm gravitating towards that. So would you say that this love of plants and love of nature is something that you felt your whole life and that has sort of led you on your path as a witch?
It's an interesting question. I was definitely raised in like Appalachia, and you can't. I grew up very poor in Appalachia, so let me say that you weren't really separated from nature necessarily in the same way that like somebody else would if you lived in the suburbs or the city, perhaps. We still went hunting for our food and things like that. So the degree of separation wasn't really there when it came to nature, thankfully. And my stepfather's really big into conservation. My parents raised bees, things like that. So we're very in tune with what's going on. And that was a value placed really, really early on in my life. And because even if we didn't have much, like nature always provided. We always had a garden full of veggies, and I never went hungry. I never, all of those things were always taken care of. And so I always feel like nature had my back. And I guess, absolutely that relationship, fed into other things. But I would consider probably the part of my childhood or the part of my earlier life that was mostly influential on my spirituality was music, actually. And it was like getting into, I was very lucky to be trained and be very well trained by professionals, especially as I got older. And I was so close to going to college to become a band director, and I wanted to be a composer. And I woke up. Music was a huge freaking part of my life. I was in all the choirs and all the bands and all state, first chair, like all of the things.
What did you play?
I'm a euphonium player, which is like a little tuba, called a baritone sometimes. It's like a little miniature tuba, sounds like a trombone.
What a cool thing.
Yeah, it's the weirdest instrument nobody's ever heard of.
Weird. I love it.
And I play a lot of things, but that was like my main squeeze. And I loved music and I loved singing, and it was just such a huge part. I knew I was going to be in music, and when my older years, like that was just the thing as a kid. And then here I am, and I look back on it now, and I don't really play any instruments now. I'm teaching myself to play the guitar just because I'm like, I need this in my life.
I know music,
but what I realized was, I compose music for ritual, and I would do things like that. It's never gone away. And if you ever get to come out to seen of our big rituals that we do out here. Like we did big 500 plus member rituals at PantheaCon and things like that. And we would write the music and sing it and perform it. And like, we do some really cool shit out here. But over the years, I just kind of, it's a lot, you know, composing music and then getting all the adults together to sing the music and to learn the music. And it's a lot of fucking work. Yeah. So we don't really do a whole lot of that anymore these days, especially after COVID and everything. But music is, you know, what I tell everybody is, like, especially if you're a quote unquote professional witch and you're doing this kind of stuff for the public, and it eats your life up. And this way that I didn't mind at first, like for, I'd say the first like 20 years or whatever, like it's what it feels like. I didn't mind. I loved being the witch guy full-time, 100%, you know, all year round. But now that I'm in my mid 30s and I'm getting a little older, I realized that, like, first of all, I'm a witch no matter what I do. Even when I'm going to the bathroom, I'm still a witch, you know, like, so no matter where I go, and I'm like, everything I do is imbued with the fact that I'm a witch. So I don't necessarily need to always carve out a hardcore intentional practice. I just need to go live out in the world and use the tools. Right. So, so I've been really last 2 years, I've been spending a lot of time working with a nonprofit organization that works with teenagers and kids in music and dance and the arts, and just helping them, you know, build up that practice for themselves. And it's the thing that I get to do, you know, especially again with COVID, I haven't really gotten to a whole lot of it, but it's the thing that I get to do that just grounds me and reminds me of the other aspects of my life that comprise me, you know, besides hardcore occultism all the time. Like, I feel bad because, like, I got a new roommate, and he's an author as well. And we're all pagan authors, witchcraft authors living in this house. There's 4 of us.
Yes.
That's all we talk about is magic 24 hours a day.
And as I said to him, you need to have a reality show.
Yeah.
There needs to be a reality show of the 4 of you in the house doing witchcraft, hanging out with plants that look like dicks. I would watch that all day long.
I'm here for it. I would totally be done. But, you know, so it's been a thing. So I would say, like, music for me is a big deal. It remains a big deal, even though I don't get to, you know, I'm not spending 6 hours a day practicing or whatever, rehearsing any longer. But that has a huge impact on not only just the way that I look at my spirituality. I would say, like, the first time I had an ecstatic experience was actually while performing. And so, you know, anybody who's a performer, you know, if you're a singer or dancer and instrumentalist, you go out and you're on a stage and you come back and you have missing time. Like, you just, where the fuck did that hour go? It was 10 minutes. You, my friend, were just staring at the face of God, right? Like, that's amazing. So
100%.
That was my thing, was like, okay, no, I know when I feel plugged in, and when I feel plugged in is when I'm, you know, performing and playing my instrument and doing my stuff. And so how can I relate that to my spirituality and, you know, yada, 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 yada. So that's really, more than anything, I would say would be at least consciously, I can look at and definitely see where there's this huge impact that being a musician had on my life. And, you know, and I would have finished that whole thing. I would have gone and become a music director, and this totally was the plan. It was absolutely where I was headed. But then the economy tanked, and it was like, you know, 2007. And so the economy tanked, and I had nothing. I had no money for college. I just had to go off on my own and figure it out. And so I didn't even get to go back to college until way later in life. And then when I did, it was for something else, you know? So it's just one of those things. It's like, you can take the musician away from the music, but you're never going to take the music out of the musician. And music just kind of worked its way into my witchcraft, and it, like, won't go away, and it's okay.
You're so going to make me cry, because I identify with that 150%. So I was a music person. I like you said, I'm not a music person. I went to school right out of high school, and I was like, I'm going to be a music teacher. This is what I'm going to do. And I was a vocalist, and I sang, and I was in every kind of chorus and choir that there was. There's musical theater, chamber orchestra choir, gospel choir, sang at the church, because I was raised in a very Italian Catholic family. And the music was my life. And it's interesting, you talked about having that first ecstatic experience, that moment where you feel really connected to spirit, being in a music environment. And I would say that for me was 100% true. Went to school for music right out of the gate, and then I flunked every single class except my music classes because I didn't go. I majored in boys and hanging out in the cafeteria. Except for my music classes, they were the only ones that meant anything to me. I didn't, at 18 years old, didn't realize that I kind of had to take math. And stopped going to school, left, went away, had a bunch of experiences, came back, went to school for something completely different. Like I said, by then it was too late. What's interesting to me is that so many people, I've asked this question to other guests on this show, and I'm going to say out of at least half of the people that I've talked to so far, professional witches, almost all of us have a background in music or theater or performance. Having that same experience of this is where my heart was, and it's not something I do anymore. It's very interesting to me to see that we all sort of found a safe place in music. We found part of self in music, and we found that connection to spirit in music, which is, as you said, ecstatic. Music is an ecstatic experience. So for us who are witches, like I said before, I don't think we choose it. I think we are it, and then we discover it. That is an inkling that we had early on in our lives, that this is an ecstatic experience that connects us to spirit in a way that eventually in our adulthood, we're able to identify as what it is. But what a cool thing. And do you, I miss singing every moment of every day. Like, I love being who I am. I love running my business. I love writing my books. I love everything about being a professional witch, being who I am and running my company. But I miss singing and music every single day. And I'm married to a musician, so I like to live
lucky you.
He's also gorgeous.
Lucky you, double lucky you.
He's pretty great. And for those of you who aren't sure, he wrote the theme music to our podcast here. So make sure you listen to it. But yeah, so I oftentimes live vicariously through him. And people ask us all the time, how come you guys don't collaborate musically? How come you and Justin don't do things musically together? I'm like, that's his spiritual space in amongst his own, pagan practices and whatever, his belief path and his rituals are. His music is his, like, you can't separate those things.
Yeah.
What a cool thing to learn about you. Let's talk a little bit now about your fabulous new book, Modern Witch. Because again, like we talked about for a couple seconds in the beginning before we got wrapped up into plant dicks and music, which might just be the name of this episode.
I'm here for it.
Plant dicks and music. So first of all, let's talk about the look of this book and the photography and how the really beautiful pictorial journey that you take people on through this book. Why did you choose that? And how do you feel that helps folks connect with the material?
So this was several years in the making for this book. It was actually when Llewellyn contacted me about writing for them. I had originally pitched this book, and this was the one that I was like, actually, I've been thinking about this for a really long time. And they were like, that's going to be really pricey because it's full cover, like it's full color all throughout the book. And just from their perspective, they were going to have to find new printers. Like there was a lot involved in the process because it's very non-traditional. And so they were really, polite, but we're like, well, do you have anything else that you want to work on? So I ended up writing my book series first, as really because, I couldn't do Modern Witch. And so I had all of the stuff from the series was part of, other things that I was able to do. So that was great and fine. But Modern Witch was like burning a hole in my artist pocket for many years before I could do anything with it. And so the plan was, there was this really amazing book by a witch named Titania. And she just goes, Titania Harding. And she is a UK witch. And she came out with this book, I want to say it was like 2006, 2007, called Enchanted. and it had this light blue crushed velvet cover, and you'd open it at hardback and you open it up and it had pictures and spells and all of that. It was really fucking cool. The problem with this book, which I still have my copy and I hold on to it for dear life because you can't really find the same version of it anymore. You can just find paperback versions of it. But the spells didn't really match the photos. So there'd be like something like reference to like, oh, tie a ribbon on something. And then you'd see a ribbon tied on something, but that would be like it. Like there was no, no how to, no. And so I always thought that wouldn't it be cool if there was a pictorial how to? And so then we signed up for these meal programs where like they would like send you a box of food and you like make the recipes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I get these giant recipe cards and I'm like, well, that's kind of perfect. Like, you're doing a spell, and a lot, like we have a store and people will come into the store and they just don't understand something because just reading it is weird. You have to see it or, whatever. So that was the idea with the spell book was I always knew that I wanted to write it. I didn't land on a format until it came time to really hit the ground running with it. And I realized that if we were to take, because I hadn't written about spells before. So I had written more about occult philosophy and practice, but I hadn't really written about spells before. So one of the things that my students kept asking was like, well, where's like the practical magic? Like where's the stuff that, where's my spells? We don't get into that. And I'm like, we don't get into that. I let everyone else kind of go off and figure that out for themselves. So let's fix that. And so I'm really, really influenced by American folk magic, and being a professional witch, that has meant over the years, of course, people come to me to help with their problems and to help them help themselves.
Yeah.
And so I had kind of figured it out that there were really like 5 basic things, 5 main types of spells that not only were new witches always coming to the craft looking for, but people who were looking for help from witches were always looking for. And that got down to love magic, protection magic, healing magic, divination. And so, looking at it, it was like, we can totally break this in prosperity magic. And so we can totally get these 5 different areas and really dive into different techniques that are used within each of them. And then take a further step back and see how those things will cross over into different areas of magic. And so it really became a formulary where it was more about like, the first little bit of the book is just about, this is how we do it, this is what we're doing and why we do it. And then the rest of it is getting into like nitty gritty spell stuff. So, and I was really careful too that, as a gay man, there's never shit in books for us. And I have trans people who are friends of mine who feel the exact same way, lesbian friends who feel the exact same way. So I was like, well, here's my chance, let's do it. So I made sure when there was love magic, there's queer love magic stuff, there's trans love magic stuff, there's for men, all of that stuff is there because we are all of these things, but also our magic has to face new circumstances every single day. So there isn't a one size fits all for any spell. You are constantly adjusting it. And what a lot of witches struggle with in their own practice is getting away from the reading the recipe and doing it all by the book, so to speak, and getting that creative, like intuitive understanding of what, these herbs are and what this practice is and why these things go together. That's something you pick up through time. But I also learned that not everyone has that brain. Like I have this weird thing in my brain, and it's because of music, I think, actually. But I have this weird thing in my brain where I take complex things and I try to break them down into their littlest parts. And we learn to do that in music. If you look at a score, you have 76 instruments and you have to be able to follow. So
and you need to be able to hear your part, play your part, sing your part, and understand its significance in the greater piece.
And how it harmonizes or reflects on other tones. So I and my students, I'm lucky I actually have a lot of very, very musical students. So I think they actually kind of get off on it. But I really look at magic in a very musical way. So this was no different for me. It was looking at these different parts and okay, what's the symphony? I even use that as an example in the book about how when we're casting spells, all of our components are like instruments in a symphony, and you being the witch have to be the director, and have to be not only just composing this, but really making sure that everything's flowing and the timing is right and da da da. So it was a big deal for me to be able to do that. And so I took what I knew of folk magic, and I took some of the more, we'll say, kind of higher occultism kind of ideas of there being formularies and, and I fused them in together with a little bit of HelloFresh. And so we have these, it's a picture book, and it you'll have a spell, and then especially if there was anything that was complicated or in multiple parts, I break it down with step-by-step photos. And because if you're doing something too and you're reading a book and there aren't any photos of it, and you're like me where you want to see something, you want to be able to emulate, right?
Yeah.
You have no fucking idea what that thing is supposed to look like necessarily, other than it's a black bag with a blah on it, So with this book, we tried something different.
It's so important to, like you're talking about, people being able to improvise or be intuitive in their magic. And I think you raised such a good point in saying that not everybody's brain works that way. I think that's really, really important. And I think not everybody's witchcraft works that way. I think people have to, and I want to go back to a point you said at the very beginning as well, that, you're a witch no matter what you're doing. Right. Your spiritual practice is in everything from brushing your teeth to being in the garden, to doing your work, to be doing music, to being on your phone. You are always a witch. It's with what intention and how close of an intention and how close of an awareness you have of your spiritual being that makes that difference. So I don't think people realize that, and it's a conversation I have all the time, is that witchcraft or being a witch is not something you do, it's something you are. We are this. So when you do something like what you've done with Modern Witch and showing people how to do, I look at that as an inspirational thing. Like, here's how I do it. Very much like when I write a recipe. Here's how I do it. Here are the ingredients. Here are the instructions. Here's a picture. Now take this and do your own thing with it.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
So maybe you're going to do it my way the first time. And then the second time you're going to go, you know what? I think it needs a little more oregano. I think it needs a little less basil. I think we need to burn a little bit less of this or light this candle instead of that candle. So I think that you're 100% right that people don't always, I don't think people trust themselves, that they learn that they see what you've done and they want to emulate, but really what your hope is that they take this and they learn and evolve their own practice from what you've laid out, which is so brilliant.
To bring music back into it,
right?
It's the idea that as an instructor, we can, like especially when I was instructor, we can teach our students to, and student is just a general term for everyone here, but we can teach our students to emulate us, right? We can do the things, we can show the exact technical blah, 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 blah. But what makes a performer is when they own that, right? When they step into that character and it becomes who they are. And to me, that's no different than it is in witchcraft. And so, everyone has that instinct. Every one of us has an instinct that this should connect to this thing. We learn it when we're kids playing with Legos, and then it's no different when we're adults and we're putting these magical concepts together and things like that. So I think the ability for us to own our magic and be authentic with it really comes from building confidence. And just like with performance, no one is just a performer. No one just gets up one day and says, I can do these things.
Yeah.
It is a skill. It may be a talent that you have, but talent is absolutely meaningless without discipline. And
Mhm.
so, and that's what music taught me, was like, yeah, like I have a natural affinity for magic. That is true.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean anything if I'm not applying it, if I'm not working on it and sculpting it and carving it. Just like I have a natural affinity for music, but I wasn't going to go anywhere if I didn't do anything with it.
It's a
And that's what I think
practice.
people don't get. Yeah. And just, you know, you are a witch, right? You are a witch. And so when you go to the bathroom, you're a witch.
Yep.
Right? That
Right.
means you have magical poo. It's true.
I mean,
You're
I
not
don't
going
know.
to do anything with
I
it,
do.
probably, but
I
yeah,
do.
it's exactly. So it's like, no matter what you do, your exhale is magical. Like everything we do is magical. And so why not do it with intention? Why not do it with
Exactly.
purpose and with some trust in yourself? And so, you know, hopefully people will get the book and they'll feel empowered to, you know, take the, because I go into basically every single spell technique that I know of. I think it's in there in some capacity, and then you can do it for you, like make it your own. Like that's like every single spell that is written in there has variations on that spell, so that you can see how easy it is to translate this into your particular issue. My goal always as a teacher of the occult, whether we're talking about hardcore intense occultism or we're talking about just spellcraft, is to give you the power. That's what it's about. Like this is not about me. I could give a class. Like I know what I'm doing. I'm cool, you know,
Right.
like as long as I'm fine. This is
Yeah.
really about you, because I had somebody who gave a fuck about me, who
Yeah.
said, "Hey, trust yourself here. Like, hey, you know, calm down, you know what you're doing." And if I hadn't had that, then, you know, I wouldn't be here. So
I hear a lot of people, especially when I teach a kitchen witch class, you know, people think they're going to come to a kitchen witch class and they're automatically going to be a great cook, or, you know, that they have to be a great cook to practice kitchen witchery. And I tell them, whether you think you're a great cook or you think you're not a great cook, you're right. You know, like you said, it's all about your intention. So if you enter into it thinking, I suck at this, or I hate cooking, or whatever, you are correct. And that is what's going to manifest in your work, whether it's your spiritual work or whatever. But again, like you said, like we've been discussing, you are a witch. So all of your work is magical. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're putting out, whatever you're taking in is magical. So I think it's really, like you said, the importance of, I'm good. I know I'm a good cook. I know my magic. I know what I'm doing. But if I can inspire you to take a little bit of this home, I encourage people all the time, like, show me, you know, they're like, oh, I made your recipe. I'm like, great, show me. How did you change it? What did you do different? How did yours come out? Because your energy is completely different from my energy. So if it's a spell that I've written or a recipe that I've made, yours is going to be different because your intention is different. Your spirit is different. Your energy is different. Show me. I want to see what it is that you did with this. And I think that's a beautiful way of expressing your craft, Devin, to other people, and saying, you know, it's not about me. And then it's also really important, especially in our community, is that if you want to walk this walk, if you want to talk this talk, you have to walk this walk. And it really is about the community, and it's about other people, and it's about how we can come together around the things that make us similar as opposed to different, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just having the best time. I think you're awesome. You have mentioned earlier about your store. So now, is that brick and mortar? Is that online?
We are actually in between. So the store was around for 30 years, and then COVID happened. And we also live where we live in the Bay Area of California. There was a lot of social and civil unrest going on too. And the particular neighborhood that we had the store in, the city, the mayor, and the police force did what we considered to be some very racist things, and we weren't really aware of the community mindset, because we were living in our little spiritual bubble. And it was pretty much, you know, COVID hit, the riots started, and we saw the response. There was, you know, a brigade of police marching down the street in front of our store. It felt like Nazi Germany. Like, it was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And tear gas, and there was nobody there. Like there was just nobody there. There were just reports that it could be there. So it was just like this weird overreaction that Black people might show up in the neighborhood. It was like, okay, fuck this, we're out of here. Like it was out.
Right.
And that was hard. That was really,
Yeah.
really hard because the store had been there for 30 years. We kind of a destination spot.
Yeah.
People knew the store, but didn't know the store's name, you know, that kind of a thing. So we were really, it was very hard. It was very hard. But you know, we're in California too, so our rent was like $9,000 a month.
It's insane. That's insane.
Yeah, it was absurd. So we, you know, COVID happened and we were like, and then the riots and the things, and we just, everything inside of us recognized that it was the end of an era and that we needed to be proactive. So we closed the store down, and that was in June. And so it's been almost a year. And that was really, really hard. Very, very difficult. It's still empty. They're using it as a waiting room for the tattoo parlor that was close to us. And that was, it's been really hard. The plan is to open another store somewhere closer to where we actually physically live.
Right.
Because there's about 45 minute drive to get to work every day. And it was just like, no point in that.
Yeah.
So the plan is to reopen. You know, we still have all of these crystals and all of these books and all of the, we have still have all the stuff from
all
the
the inventory that you have.
Yeah. And you know, I've been in the metaphysical retail markets for 16, 17 years now. So I don't like, the other thing is I'm like, I don't really know. I could go bartend again or something if I had to, but I don't really want to do that.
Don't really want to do that.
And you know, so so we're just kind of waiting. We you know, we've checked out a couple buildings, and so we're letting spirit guide us right now with it. But we still have the online store. We still have our school online.
Yeah, you were mentioning in the notes that I have, you were talking about your online academy. So tell us all about the academy, because that's really interesting.
The academy started as an extension of the classes that we taught at the store. So the store is called the Mystic Dream. And so we have the Mystic Dream Academy. It's going to get a name change very soon. And I'm very excited. I can't say anything yet, but I do know that is happening, and it's going to be a really, really big deal.
That's super exciting.
And everyone's going to go, oh, of course. So it's getting a name change, and we're going to get a little bit of facelift. But it's, you know, it started as this extension for us to continue teaching, you know, what we teach inside the store online. And it just kind of grew. Like we started Black Rose as really a way to kind of help us with our other witchcraft classes. And it turned into its own thing, and it's awesome and so cool now. And we love it. And there's a lot going on. So you can, you can learn everything. You can go there and take classes in our Black Rose witchcraft. You can take classes in what's called Modern Conjure, which is American folk magic. This Chas Bogan, the Secret Keys of Conjure. He's the guy who formulated that class, put it all together. There's Reiki. There's a little bit of everything right now.
Wow, so cool.
Yeah, and you can, you know, take it all from the comfort of your own home. Where I do know that other schools charge a lot more money than we do, and you don't get as much. So I do know that. So check us out. You can just go to themysticdreamacademy.com, or you can just go to modernwitch.com, and there's like links to everything there.
So it's themysticdreamacademy.com?
Academy.com, yeah.
Or modernwitch.com.
Yeah, I will. If you just go to modernwitch.com, you'll never be lost when it comes to all of those things.
I have to say that your website is pretty actually excellent. I'm a little bit critical in that department.
It needs so much love right now. Oh my goodness.
Marketing,
I appreciate you saying that.
And branding. And I have to say, like, I was like, you know, I do my research before I do this podcast and who I want to invite on. And I was like, oh, look, this is her. This is very nice. Easy to navigate. So much to see there. Links to everything. Like really, really user friendly. And right away, you know that this is a space where you can find what you need to find. So go to modernwitch.com and you can find all of anything related to Devin Hunter, the great, the amazing, the wonderful, fabulous, bearded Devin Hunter. Let me think. Okay. So here's my last question. This is my signature question. So I'm a kitchen witch, obviously. That's common knowledge. So if you could have me as a kitchen witch make one magical meal for you, what would it be and why?
You know,
I know, it's a hard one.
it's really hard. Especially because now there's like all these weird diety things going on.
Well, I'm
I
gluten
would say
intolerant as well. So like I'm very versed in how to make gluten-free food.
okay. Well, I would love, actually, we're gonna skip the meal and go straight to dessert. And I would love like a decent, like a really good gluten-free what do you call it? Oh my goodness. It's a type of cake. Upside down cake, pineapple upside down cake. That's what I want. I want a really good gluten-free pineapple upside down cake, and I would be in heaven.
So that's really interesting because as I've been talking to you, I've been kind of feeling mangoes, pineapple, coconut, like I've been feeling those flavors around you.
I love all those flavors. Yes.
So that's a pineapple upside down cake. Oh,
Yeah.
I can make that happen for you.
Mm-hmm. I love me some pineapple upside down cake.
With rum?
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, queen. Yes.
I got you.
Yes, ma'am.
It's interesting as well because your roommate also requested a dessert. And you have been the only two people that have so far requested desserts of me. So what's going to happen is I'm going to post the recipes that I've come up with on my website. So all of those links will be on the liner notes for this episode. So you'll be able to find all the links for Devin will be on this episode and how to reach him and all about where to find his book and how awesome he is and the academy that we're talking about. And then there will be a link for the recipe for the pineapple upside down cake. And if you ever make it out here to New Hampshire after COVID, I'm literally like 5 minutes from Christopher. So if you're ever out here seeing him, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to wind up having my partner, Justin, keeps telling me, stop inviting people over because everybody's going to come. And I'm like, yeah, we have this huge backyard and we'll have all the witches and I'll just make all these things. So I'll make a pineapple upside down cake and I'll feed it to you. In the backyard,
totally.
Under the apple tree. Isn't it? It'd be amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Devin Hunter, for being here and spending an hour chatting with me. You are fucking delightful.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think you're pretty fucking delightful too.
You think? Yeah. Look, see, now we're friends.
Now we're friends.
Okay, so thanks for listening, everybody. Check out the notes in this episode for more information on how to reach Devin Hunter. Tell your friends about this podcast. Tune into Devin's podcast, Modern Witch Podcast, which is also fucking delightful. And thank you so much for listening, everybody. We really appreciate you being here. And until next time, I leave you with many blessings and so much gratitude.